Hello there. This teacher guide is about our Mindset Learn series of lessons on hardware and system software for grade 11 learners. In this guide, we tell you what the series of lessons is about and how it links to the curriculum. We also discuss ideas for using the lessons with your learners. You may want to make notes, so have pencil and paper ready. There are 5 lessons in this series. In Lesson 1, we review what parts make up a computer and identify different types of communication that takes place between the different parts. In Lesson 2, we take a closer look at the role of the motherboard and introduce the idea of form factor. Next, we examine the sockets, slots, and ports on the motherboard and show how internal components and external devices are connected together and how each part is controlled. In Lesson 4, we focus on getting the hard drive connected and find out how control cards are used for linking peripheral devices outside the case. And in our final lesson, we explore how the system software gets the different parts of the computer to work together. In this series, we address Learning Outcome 1, Hardware and System Software, and focus on Assessment Standards 11.1.3, which states that the learner must be able to discuss how the various components of computers interact with one another. We also address Assessment Standard 11.1.17, state and discuss the implications of the latest computer technologies. After watching and engaging with the lessons in this series, your learners should have a very good sense of how communication takes place between the various components of a computer and should be able to explain how technology is continually changing. The learning outcome and assessment standards for each lesson are stated at the beginning of each video lesson in this series. In addition, lesson outcomes linked to these are also given for each lesson. In this series of lessons, we join Zamo and Morwa during the holidays. They decide to build a computer in their spare time. Zamo and Morwa are joined by Marie, who helps them along the way by giving advice and explaining some of the more difficult concepts. This approach provides a context for learning outside of the classroom, which your learners should be able to identify with, and it may motivate them to engage in similar activities themselves. The success of these video lessons depends on the way you use them in your classroom. We suggest that you watch the lessons yourself as part of your planning. Decide which videos you will use and think about how to integrate them into your learning program. To get the full benefit of the lessons, your learners need to engage actively with the concepts presented. So when you preview the videos, think about how to introduce each lesson and what follow-up activities will be useful. Also, watch out for places in a video where you could pause and have a class discussion or ask learners to complete an activity or solve a problem posed in the video. You'll also need to decide how you're going to show your learners the video lessons. For some lessons, you could show the video to the whole class, but you can also use your computers for individual learners or groups of learners to watch the videos at their own pace. Assessment is an important part of teaching and learning, and the lessons provide opportunities for a range of different types of assessment. When you pause the video for learners to do an activity, you can assess their understanding of key ideas in the video and adjust your lesson plan if necessary. The task provided at the end of each lesson is always linked to at least one of the lesson outcomes, and thus provides you with a useful assessment opportunity. Lesson 1 starts out by introducing Zamo and Morwa. They decide to build a computer with parts they found in Marie's garage. This lesson revises what learners should know about hardware components, but then focuses on the different types of communication between the different parts of the computer. The task given for this lesson should provide useful revision, but it's essential that learners have a well-labeled diagram of the motherboard to work with for the lessons that follow. In Lesson 2, we begin at a high pace when we discuss the speed of communication between the CPU and the RAM. At this point, it's essential for the learners to work with their diagrams from the task given in the previous lesson. Alternatively, you could print the diagram found in the lesson notes for this lesson for them to follow while they are watching the video. We also discussed the role of the system clock and introduced the idea of overclocking, used by people who want to make their machines run faster, usually for playing games. But of course, the motherboard we use must fit the case. To solve the problem, we introduce the concept of form factor and show how technology has changed over time. In Lesson 3, Zamo and Morwa discuss the importance of modular design and show how different components and devices can be connected using sockets, slots, and ports on the motherboard. We show how the CPU is connected to the motherboard using thermal paste and how the RAM slots into position where the graphic cards fit in, and how peripheral devices are connected inside and outside the case. You will notice that Zamo and Morwa discuss how what they are doing with the actual parts relates back to the diagram of the motherboard too. It's important to stress to your learners that controlling circuitry, called the controller, is either built into the motherboard or into an expansion card. Next, we compare how different types of hard drives are connected to the motherboard. And then we join Morwa and her friend Gamu as they visit a computer shop to find out how peripherals such as printers, cameras, and sound equipment can be connected to the motherboard. While in the shop, they also take a careful look at the different graphic cards available and how monitors can be connected to these. In Lesson 5, we tie up all the loose ends and show how the hardware works with the system software to get the job of processing data done. We join Morwa and Zamo as they check their answers to an assignment. In the assignment, they find out about multitasking, multi-threading, multiprocessing, and hyper-threading. The task for the lesson requires your learners to review these important concepts by drawing a diagram to illustrate them clearly. There's a set of lesson notes for this video series on our website. These notes give a summary of the key points of each lesson, the tasks and task answers. You will also find teacher guidelines for this series as part of the print resources. In addition, there are interactive multimedia resources which you can use with your learners so that they can complete activities related to hardware and systems software. We hope that this teacher guide has given you a helpful overview of this series and will help you to use the mindset resources when teaching hardware to your grade 11 learners.